The passengers chuckled, rolling their eyes at the elderly woman's quiet dignity. But minutes later, when the windows filled with the thunderous sight of military jet fighters flying alongside the plane and saluting her, the laughter died in stunned silence. Who was she really, and why did the skies honor her so powerfully? The cabin air buzzed with the low hum of idle chatter, the clinking of coffee cups, and the faint shuffle of passengers adjusting their seats. Most were restless, eager to reach their destination, their patience thin after the long wait for takeoff. In the midst of the crowd sat an elderly woman, her hands folded neatly over a worn leather handbag, her posture upright, her face calm but unreadable. She wore no jewelry, no expensive clothes, nothing that demanded attention. But her presence was different, still, composed, almost disciplined. To many around her, however, she appeared simply out of place. A few rows back, two young men exchanged mocking glances. One leaned in and whispered, not quietly enough, "Looks like Grandma's off to a knitting competition." His friend snickered, loud enough for the others nearby to hear. The laughter spread like a ripple, not cruel but dismissive, the kind that treats someone as insignificant. The woman did not flinch. She sat with quiet dignity, her gaze fixed on the clouds outside the window. Minutes later, as the aircraft leveled into cruising altitude, the mood shifted. A muffled announcement crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've just been informed that we will be receiving an honorary escort for a portion of our journey. Please do not be alarmed." Confused murmurs erupted across the cabin. "Escort?" The answer came swiftly. Out of the wide cabin windows, shadows streaked by sleek, metallic, powerful. Gasps echoed as two jet fighters appeared, soaring in perfect formation alongside the passenger plane. Their wings glinted under the sun, their presence unmistakable. At first, many assumed it was some kind of military exercise, nothing to do with them. But then it happened. The lead jet tilted, dipping its wing in a slow, deliberate salute. The second followed, mirroring the motion with precision. The laughter that once filled the cabin dissolved into silence. Every pair of eyes turned toward the elderly woman, who sat unmoving, her expression serene but her eyes glistening with emotion. She knew exactly what this was, and it was meant for her. The same passengers who had smirked now sat in awkward disbelief. Their curiosity burned. Who was she? Why would fighter jets, symbols of national strength, honor an old woman in the middle of a commercial flight? The truth was about to unfold. But at that moment, the cabin was filled with a silence far louder than any laughter before. The whispers started softly, weaving through the cabin like a current. Passengers leaned over seats, exchanged guesses, and stole glances at the elderly woman who sat still as stone. Some assumed she was the wife of a military officer. Others imagined she was part of government or royalty. But the truth, as it would soon emerge, was far more profound. The flight attendant, visibly moved, approached her aisle with a softness that contrasted sharply with the earlier mockery. She knelt beside the woman and spoke gently. "Ma'am, the captain asked me to thank you personally. Would you like to come forward?" For a moment the woman hesitated. Years of humility had taught her to keep her story hidden, to let the world forget. But today the salute had made hiding impossible. Slowly, she nodded and rose to her feet. As she walked down the narrow aisle, heads turned. No one laughed now. There was only a silence laced with shame and awe. When she reached the front, the captain himself opened the cockpit door and stepped out, breaking protocol. His crisp uniform and steady voice carried weight. He saluted her right there in front of everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice firm but emotional. "We are honored to have on board today a passenger who is more than just a traveler. This woman is a decorated veteran, one of the few who served in missions most of us only read about in history books. She flew combat support during the war under fire, when few believed women could even belong in the skies. And today, the Air Force honors her service." Collective gasp filled the cabin. Some covered their mouths, others lowered their eyes in regret. The young men who had laughed earlier shrank in their seats, their bravado gone. The woman, standing before them, did not boast or grandstand. Her voice was soft but carried the gravity of lived experience. "I was just doing my duty," she said simply. "I was one of many who served. Many never made it home. The salute you saw today, it's not for me alone. It's for them too." Her words landed heavy, piercing through the thin layer of superficiality that had filled the cabin earlier. Suddenly, she was no longer the old lady with a handbag. She was a living monument, a reminder of sacrifice, courage, and resilience. As she quietly returned to her seat, the passengers saw her differently. Some wiped away tears. Others tried to muster the courage to apologize, though she seemed not to need it. Outside, the jet fighters remained, their wings cutting through the sky like steel guardians. They weren't just escorting a plane. They were honoring a legacy. The laughter that had once mocked her had been replaced by reverence. But the most powerful moment was still to come, when the salute would take on a meaning no one on that flight would ever forget. The cabin was quieter than it had been the entire flight. Even the usual hum of conversation was gone, replaced by a heavy, reverent silence. Every passenger's eyes seemed fixed either on the elderly woman or on the jets flying steadfastly beside them. The younger passengers, who had mocked her earlier, now looked visibly shaken. One of them stared at the floor, his face pale, while the other stole glances at her as if wishing for a chance to take back his words. Guilt hung over them like storm clouds. The woman, however, carried herself with the same calm she had shown since boarding. Her eyes lingered on the jets outside, but this time there was something different, a quiet sorrow hidden beneath her composure. The captain's voice came over the intercom again, softer this time, carrying weight that pressed against every ear. "Ladies and gentlemen, our escort will soon depart. They request a moment of silence in honor of our distinguished passenger, and for all who served alongside her." The cabin bowed into silence. Not a cough, not a shuffle, not even the rustle of a magazine. The only sound was the steady hum of engines carrying them through the sky. Then it happened. The jets shifted formation, moving closer. The lead fighter dipped its wing low again in a deep, deliberate salute. The second followed, precise and synchronized, a display of respect that went beyond words. For an instant, the sunlight caught their wings just right, casting long streaks of gold across the clouds. It felt less like machinery and more like angels in flight. The woman raised a trembling hand to her lips, her eyes glistening. Memories flooded back. Comrades lost, battles fought, promises made to those who never returned. The salute was not just for her, and she knew it. It was for all of them. Around her, passengers wiped away tears. Some pressed their hands together in silent prayer. Even the young men who had laughed earlier could no longer hide their emotion. One whispered hoarsely, "I'm sorry," though whether he meant it for her or himself, no one could tell. As the jets peeled away, soaring upward until they vanished into the blue, the cabin erupted. Not in applause, but in something deeper. A few began to clap softly, respectfully, but most simply sat in stunned silence, hearts heavy with a mixture of sorrow, pride, and awe. The woman returned to her quiet composure, her hands folded over her handbag once more. She didn't need recognition. She didn't need applause. For her, the salute was enough. But for everyone else on that flight, the moment was unforgettable. They had entered the journey with one view of her, a frail, forgettable old woman. They would leave with another, a hero disguised in plain sight, whose legacy soared higher than the plane itself. And long after the jets disappeared, the lesson remained clear: never underestimate the quiet strength of the person sitting beside you.